Licensing and Regulation, Executive Director Brian Francis, Commission Chairman Rick Figueroa. And now, for those in attendance and UFC fans watching around the world, it's time for the undisputed UFC Heavyweight Championship of the world.
If you are looking forward to the Jon Jones vs Ciryl Gane fight, then be sure to show this by smashing the like button. Thank you for joining me once again, and welcome back to Keenan K TV. With the Jon Jones vs Ciryl Gane fight just around the corner, let us go over my own custom created fighter cards. Starting with the best light heavyweight fighter of all time, Jon Bones Jones, has an overall rating of 92. This comes in as one of my highest rated fighters in my entire collection. With age and added mileage and added weight and a new division, I can only assume that he will not be as effective as he was at light heavyweight, but this does not mean that he will not be able to dominate this division either. Looking over at his opponents, Ciryl Gane, the former interim champion, has an overall rating of 86. And so when we put them side by side, you can immediately see the difference in caliber and skill set. Now, let these numbers not fool you. This is Jon Jones' first fight at heavyweight. All of his skills are very well rounded. He's a tremendous striker with amazing grappling, tremendous stamina, great chin. He's very physical, he knows how to come forward, take opponents down. And so just because Jones has a 92 and Ciryl Gane has an 86, this does not mean that this will be a walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination. And so with that being said, let us move over to my breakdown part of this video. The reason why this fight will not be a walk in the park mainly comes down to the fact that Ciryl Gane is one of a kind. In my opinion, by the time the fight was done against Francis Ngannou, I felt that he was the way better martial artist on the night in the sense of actually letting the opportunity slip out of his hands. If he had better fundamentals and prepared to wrestle better, I think he would be the current world champion. Because when it came down to the striking part, he made Francis Ngannou shadowbox almost 5 rounds long, and he's known to do that to every single opponent that he has fought. And the main reason is this: there has never been a switch stance, bladed stance, karate style, quick, light on his feet, agile, smart heavyweight striker in the history of this division. So it's only natural that he can go in there and just outclass these opponents. His biggest weakness, however, just as I mentioned in my last video, comes down to his inability to use his physicality, come forward, and with his fake southpaw stance, he's fighting with his power hand in front and the weak hand behind him. This takes away from actually being able to hurt his opponents, and at the heavyweight division, what bigger tool is there than to knock out your opponent? And so this greatly costed him the world title against Francis Ngannou, only being able to go on the back foot, only being able to make the opponent come in and try and catch him. As much as that is going to be a weakness against Francis Ngannou, it is his strength going up against Jon Bones Jones. Here is why. Most of Jon Jones's most notable wins were almost against blown up middleweight fighters. His impressive victory over Lyoto Machida. Well, Lyoto Machida is a blown up middleweight. Rashad Evans, blown up middleweight. Daniel Cormier, stating himself that he is 5'9" and not 5'11", in terms of height and reach, might be even able to be classified as a welterweight if not for his body mass, which, you know, actually just classifies him as a blown up fighter for the light heavyweight division. Even though that might sound crazy, but that is just the way it goes in height and reach. Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen. Even though Mauricio Shogun Rua never cut down to 185, he most definitely looked like somebody who could do that. And so everything we have amongst these fighters is one thing: they are significantly smaller than Jon Jones. And now, if we take a look at the opponents that were about his size, then all of a sudden Jon Jones is having a lot of problems, a lot of struggle. His 84-inch reach or his 12-inch reach advantage over Daniel Cormier all of a sudden goes away, and now he's fighting a 6'5" Alexander Gustafsson, and he's about to lose that fight in their first encounter, obviously. In his second fight, Gustafsson fought a completely different and ridiculous fight, just chasing down Jon Jones, walking into big blows. It was just an atrocious game plan, and plus he was way over the hill anyway. But coming back to the argument, he goes in there and fights Dominic Reyes, who is as tall as him, but obviously he doesn't have the reach advantage. But you can immediately see when a fighter is the same same size as Jon Jones and this fighter does not come forward and chase Jon Jones looks very, very regular. He does not have any of his outstanding skills on the back foot being displayed the same way on the front foot. He looks very mediocre in that sense. That is also why a lot of people believe that Dominic Reyes beat Jon Jones. Because what did Reyes, Gustafsson, Thiago Santos, all of Jon Jones' tough fights, what did they all have in common? They all had a fighter who refused to come forward and forced Jon Jones to come forward. Then what started to happen? Gustafsson took him down. Dominic Reyes was clipping him. Thiago Santos was connecting with a lot of leg kicks. These things just all add up and display one thing. Offensively, Jon Jones is not as good as he is defensively. And who does he share that trait with? Exactly, his opponent Ciryl Gane. So what is it that we have right here? We have two fighters who will refuse to come forward and who will play the outside game. And in my opinion, whoever takes the first step forward and tries to chase the opponent is already fighting a losing battle. Now, I believe that out of the two fighters, Jon Jones is a lot more stubborn, calculated, and more experienced, and I believe he will have the mental edge and just be able to force Ciryl Gane to chase him more than he has to chase Ciryl Gane. However, I might be mistaken because obviously it can go either way. Both fighters heavily rely on leg kicks while walking down the opponent, so there is no clear-cut winner as to who is better on the front foot, but when the fight is in the clinch up against the fence, Jon Jones is way better than Ciryl Gane. Ciryl Gane lacks so much offensive ability when he has the opponent up against the fence. At least Jon Jones can go in there and seriously damage the opponent when they are backed up. Look at what he did to Glover Teixeira. In the clinch, he was a phenom. He's able to take down his opponents. Where does Ciryl Gane come into play when that is a discussion? Absolutely nowhere. So that is why I believe Jon Jones might be a little bit more comfortable walking down Ciryl Gane, but we will just have to wait and see. Alright, then the other part of this breakdown comes into play. Just purely looking at Jon Jones, just moving up, right? He is going to be a big question mark on the night. Will he be as agile as he is on his feet at light heavyweight? At heavyweight? Probably not. He's been 3 years out of the game. He has gotten older. He's going to be weighing more. It's his first time fighting at heavyweight, and he's literally fighting the best heavyweight fighter there is currently on the UFC roster. And on top of it, Jon Jones' best trait, which was always going to be speed and range, is now gone. He's fighting a fighter who is about his size. He might not even have the speed advantage when it comes down to hand speed and footwork, so then he has to rely on one thing that he doesn't really rely on so much, and that is his physicality, his physical strength, his power. Will Jon Jones be able to use his boxing and knock out Ciryl Gane? I highly doubt it. This fight will probably just come down to a lot of kicks and jabs. If there is some real damage going to be done, I believe that Jon Jones will be able to walk down Ciryl Gane up against the fence, clinch him up, over underhooks, take him down, and then start to implement a lot of great ground and pound just like he did against Alexander Gustafsson. That might be a way. However, I do not immediately see that he will have his way trying to take down a big and heavy fighter like Ciryl Gane. Yes, you can say if Ngannou can take him down, so can Jon Jones. Well, Ngannou is cutting down from almost 300 pounds. Jon Jones is just bulking up, and he doesn't even look to be that much more muscular or being able to ragdoll his opponent just the same way he did at 205. Because here's this thing, right? We can say that Jon Jones is the better wrestler. Yes, he might have weighed in more than Ciryl Gane as well, but Ciryl Gane is a lot leaner and a lot bigger from the looks of it too. And so where did we hear this before? You're right, Daniel Cormier versus Jon Jones. Daniel Cormier is a way better wrestler than Jon Jones, and how many times was he able to take Jon Jones down? Close to 0. But was Jon Jones able to take down Daniel Cormier? And then there you go. So there's a clear discrepancy when it comes down to, okay, but I have the skills and techniques, but I'm not as big. Now, obviously, the size difference is not as big as it is with Cormier and Jones, but you get my point. This is Jon Jones' first time at heavyweight. At least Daniel Cormier had a track record of being able to toss around Josh Barnett and other bigger heavyweight fighters like Stipe Miocic. I'm not saying that he won't be able to take Gane down with relative ease, but I'm saying that it might not be as simple as if a wrestler of the caliber of Francis Ngannou can ragdoll around Ciryl Gane, then Jon Jones can do the same. MMA math does not really work in that manner. Now, aside from all of that, the main key components in this matchup will be, in my opinion, coming down to Jon Jones' jabs and his leg kicks, or his knee stomps if we want to call it, against Ciryl Gane's leg kicks and switching stances and jabs and his distance management and his high kicks and things of that nature. So everything will be coming down to the fact that for the first time in his career, Jon Jones might be facing a better kicker. We've seen that a former middleweight fighter in Thiago Santos was able to do some serious damage to Jon Jones, so how will Ciryl Gane not be able to do even more damage? If he implements a fighting style where he refuses to come forward and forces Jon Jones to come forward, and he starts to tee off on those leg kicks, calf kicks, and we can see how small that Jon Jones' legs are or his calves are for the heavyweight division, then we might be able to see some serious slowing down in the mobility of Jon Jones and damage pile up on those legs. And once those legs are gone, the punches, the effectiveness in his overall game will be gone as well. So for Jon Jones, in my opinion, to be very successful, will be coming down to fighting a close and dirty fight against Ciryl Gane. On the outside, on the medium range, on the kicking range, I believe that Ciryl Gane is a little bit more seasoned, quicker, experienced, and a little bit more versatile. And with Gane switching stances very often, that might off-put Jon Jones. Even though Jon Jones switches stances himself, it is not to the same extent of Ciryl Gane. So he's fighting a copy of himself in some sense. So that is very interesting to see. And that is why I'm so excited to see this fight over Francis Ngannou. But with all of that being said, who do I think will win come fight night? The answer will have to go to Jon Bones Jones. Now, even though he might be a favorite to win, I do believe that people are underestimating Ciryl Gane and overestimating Jon Jones' abilities, whether it is in his wrestling or his ability to come forward or his overall striking game. They just look at his accolades and how he has done, but they don't really look at how he did it. So I think what I did right here in this breakdown was just go over how he was able to do it, what kind of advantages he had at 205, and how, he was young and hungry, and now he's much older, maybe slower, maybe his chin has been a little bit more deteriorated. Obviously when fighters get older, that chin starts to diminish as well, so we do not really know where he is. And with a 3-year long layoff, it is not the same as people saying like, oh, Jon Jones, whenever he came back, he looked better than ever before, and then they just take a look at the fight against OSP, but that was, I think less than a year ago from his last fight, and then he comes back and fights Daniel Cormier, and the difference in that time gap wasn't that significant either. So how can you really compare anything? You can say, okay, he came back and looked good, but the time gap in this matchup is significantly bigger, and it is also a significantly bigger matchup, literally. So let's see how it all will play out like. I wouldn't be so surprised to see Jon Jones come forward, miss his shots, Ciryl Gane tagging him up, moving around, being very elusive, not caving in, making Jon Jones shadow box, making Jon Jones shoot for a desperate takedown or a single leg, or coming recklessly, and he might get clipped, and Jon Jones does not like to get hit. He immediately backpedals, he stretches his arms, he just kind of postures away. So maybe in that regard, Ciryl Gane might be able to switch stances, step in, and then connect an overhand right just the way that Dustin Poirier does. We do not really know in those sequences what both fighters will be able to do, but when we take a look at the bigger picture of how they fight, then we can simulate it relatively easily in our heads. And now the big question becomes, will we have those question marks answered in terms of Jon Jones's new weight, this long layoff, everything around this big event? That is what we want to see come fight night. And I can comfortably say that this matchup will be the most technical Jon Jones fight that we have seen since the Alexander Gustafsson 1 fight. And just the same way that Alexander Gustafsson started to gas out at the end of round number 3, I believe that Ciryl Gane does not have the same conditioning as Jon Jones, and when it comes down to the championship rounds, Jon Jones will pull through a lot better than Ciryl Gane. But then again, Jon Jones hasn't fought in such a long time. He's a lot bigger now too, so this is what makes it all exciting. Every single attribute that we have given Jon Jones now has somewhat of an asterisk behind it, right? He's always had the size advantage, now he doesn't. He's always been a lot faster. Maybe today he won't be. He's always been larger than his opponents. Well, in this matchup he might be able to weigh a little bit more, but he definitely, in my opinion, is not the bigger and leaner heavyweight out of the two. He's never fought against a very defensive-minded fighter, and today he is. So every single thing that we can somewhat make a connection to in his previous fights, all of a sudden looks a bit shaky in my eyes. A lot of people won't admit this, but it is. And with Ciryl Gane losing to Francis Ngannou, do you really not believe he didn't work on all of his weaknesses that was exposed in that matchup? Come on, if anything, we will have the best Ciryl Gane, and on the flip side, we might have the worst of Jon Jones ever. So we don't really know anything up until the first bell rings and the fight plays out live in front of the millions and millions of MMA fans. But before that moment comes, in the end, only time will tell what will truly happen. For now, I have been Keenan from Keenan KTV, signing off. Later.